we just finished our 13th book of the Bible. If you read Song of Solomon's one, Songs of Solomon or Songs of Songs, depending on what version of the Bible that you read, we just finished our 13th book of the Bible. Can you believe it? Like, I mean, I'm amazed, and I know it's only because of by the empowerment of the Holy Spirit, because I say, oh, I've been a Christian for this long, I know I've read the Bible and all, but the kind of insights that I'm getting and the fact that I'm just like, reading consistently is just so amazing to me, and I hope you feel the same way. So now this book, right, there's some uncertainty about the author, even though one of my Bibles clearly said it was Solomon, right? But some say it was written by Solomon. Others believe it was written about him by someone who lived in that time. And some others think it was just written during his time because he was the wisest man. And then the songs were written in the style of Solomon, and they were written, in the language of wisdom, but it wasn't necessarily him. I don't know. Sometimes I read it as him because there's some parts that I was like, there's no how this is in Solomon. And then other parts that I didn't know much about. But I personally struggle to believe it was about him because he had so many wives and concubines. 1,000. So 700 wives and 300 concubines. 1,000 women. Anyway, the book describes a monogamous relationship, something that Solomon clearly did not know much about, because why would somebody be talking about their beloved when you had like 999 others? Except, of course, it was about maybe his first love before, he went down the path. I don't know. This book has sparked arguments for a long time on whether the poems directly describe the failings and the activities of human love, or whether it was an allegory of God's love for his people. The Jews believe that it is a depiction of Yahweh's love for his people. Christians believe that it is a reflection of Jesus Christ's love for the church, and I personally believe it could be both. It's really open to interpretation. There are 4 main speakers in this book: the Shulamite, or the shepherdess, the maiden, the daughters of Jerusalem, her friends or her entourage, and the beloved, who was the shepherd, her lover, and King Solomon, because some actually say, was said by Solomon. The book follows the common progression of romantic relationships of their time. So courtship, stroke, betrothal. When someone is betrothed, so betrothal. Betrothal. Sorry, I'm having so much fun. I can't even pronounce anything today, but you know what I mean. Wedding feast, wedding, and marriage. I noticed a hint of colorism in the Shulamite's description of herself. She seemed to be despising her dark skin, which showed that she worked out in the field and was tanned by the sun, unlike the fair upper-class maidens. Now, I know that it was probably not, colorism probably, or could have been a thing at that time, because that's what made me wonder, why was she, when she was saying, oh, I'm dark, I'm not, I'm not like the other maidens, I'm dark because I've been out in the sun. And also I was like, oh, does dark, mean less attractive? But then I think it probably may also have something to do with the fact that she was working class and she was a shepherdess. And remember, even from the time of David, we knew that shepherds weren't really looked upon as, upstanding, or, they weren't really considered as part of society as such because of, their job. Sorry, where was I? Yes. And this was in verse 1 to 3, but in verse 15, her lover exclaimed that she was fair. Because it says, you are fair, my love, you are fair. He didn't see her as dark. He didn't see her as the dark skin and tanned, but as fair. He let her know that he found her attractive and repeated so many times throughout the book. Now, if I looked at this, which I did from the Christian's point of view of Christ and the church, so it's like, oh, saying, oh, I'm such a sin, I'm so dark in my sin. And Jesus is saying that, no, you're light. All I see when I see you is light. I see you fair-skinned and fresh because I am your Lord. So that was really like amazing to me. A recurring refrain throughout the song is do not stir up or awaken love until it pleases. Now, we've heard this so many times, and for this, there are several interpretations. One is like a warning against, this is what I heard, interrupting the lovers, or a caution against premature arousal of sexual passions. And that's the most important, because they always say, oh, don't awaken love, like, don't do anything that would cause you to sin sexually before you are married, because that's the most popular, as affirms premarital chastity. The transition from courtship to marriage wasn't clearly defined, but chapter 4 describes them as bride and groom, and in verse 15 implied that the bridegroom had been invited to the bridal chamber and that the marriage had been consummated. In verse 5, when the Shulamite had a bad dream, in that state, she revealed perhaps some trouble in their relationship. However, she didn't remain in that state for so long, but repented and reawakened her affections for her lover. That was from verse 6 to 16. And it showed me that relationships don't necessarily have to be so beautiful, because this would seem like, oh, such a beautiful love song. But those dreams, sequences showed that it was probably trouble, but then they overcame it. Now, this book clearly demonstrates God's love and his good and perfect design for man, for marriage, and for sex. He had good things in mind when he created relationships, marriage, and sex. And as Christians, we must adopt God's standard for these things, in spite of what the world is saying and what the world has turned them, made them to be. It is our responsibility not to abuse them and use them, the way the world is using them. Now, obviously, everything is just so fluid, but we must adhere to God's standard for love and marriage and sex, to his glory and to our joy. Thank you for joining me. See you tomorrow. We're entering into the book of Proverbs, and I'll be sharing lessons from Proverbs 1 to 3. Bye.